The phrase climate change has been in existence for decades, but most people are still curious about climate and the environment. Climate change is not just an environmental issue, as too many people still believe. It is an all-encompassing threat to health, to agriculture, to peace and security, to the very ground millions of people live on, and to the global economy. Hello and welcome to the TrustArthur program where we discuss key topical issues around the globe. On today's program, we'll be discussing environmental sustainability and protection in Islam. Joining me virtually for this conversation is Sheik Nurudeen Lemu, Director of Research and Training at the Dawah Institute of Nigeria. Is also the Assistant General Secretary of Islamic Education Trust, MENA. You're welcome to this program, Sheik Lemu.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Climate change, they say, is induced by human beings, and even some Muslim scholars name climate change as a dire threat to human health. Could you share with us how effective are current Islamic finance interventions in addressing climate change in Nigeria?
Firstly, I'd like to appreciate your organizing a topic on climate change. This is also because most of us are so busy with our respective jobs and preoccupations with our careers and families that we often forget what's going on around us. Climate change, there are some aspects of climate change that are natural in the sense that they will go ahead with or without us. But what I think everybody agrees on is that we influence the speed of this change. We influence the rate of change and consequently its impact on our environment. We should remember that the environment is the canvas on which everything takes place. Agriculture takes place within an environment that is affected by nature, and the jobs there are affected by that. So everything, the whole economy, everything operates on this canvas called environment, and climate change influences different places in different ways. So if you look at some parts of the country, climate change would influence it with heavy rains and flooding. In another part of the country, it would come in the form of erosion, destroying roads, dirtying up rivers, silting up dams, and affecting the sustainability of these sources of livelihood. But it also influences the movement of deserts. And so we find the Sahara Desert is moving southwards at a speed of about 3 to 5 kilometers per year. That's about 100 kilometers in 30 years. So land that was not desert, in 30 years, when some of our children would be our age, over 100 kilometers of land will be covered with new deserts. And think of all the villages and towns that live within that band of the Sahel or the Sudan savanna coming downwards. How much land will no more be available for the traditional forms of agriculture? How many wells and boreholes would be dry because insufficient water? How much concentration of people would be around the existing waters? How much more conflict between herdsmen and farmers, as everybody needs water either for their crops or for their animals? And these are poor people. So these are not people who have some alternative source of income. They are ready to fight and die for their farms or for their cattle. And at the same time, over the next 30 years, the population of this country is expected to double, to get to about 450 million. So the challenges ahead of us are enormous, and they are expanding and increasing at an exponential growth. So to your question, how effective are current Islamic finance interventions at addressing issues surrounding climate change? Firstly, I should say Islamic finance is a small part of Islamic economics. And the economics is a small part of what influences the environment. And so, we shouldn't have too many hopes that Islamic finance is going to be some solution to every problem. Islamic finance is concerned about the ethics of making money, making sure that there is no exploitation, making sure that the sources of income are halal, that there's ethics involved in how we earn our livelihood. In other words, I don't make money from an industry that is causing car accidents, because people who get involved in car accidents, a significant percent of them have been drinking alcohol, for example. Or when I see crime rates going high and people using weapons, handguns, I am not investing in those businesses that support crime or criminality. That I am not involved in riba, which basically is where the capitalist, or the one who owns the capital, the creditor, is making a guaranteed profit irrespective of the loss handled by the debtor or the entrepreneur. So while definitely climate change should be a priority for all those concerned, whether they are ethical or not, Islamic finance definitely should be concerned about climate change. And what we find is, I know for Lotus Bank, and I'm sure for probably a few others, part of their corporate social responsibility is tree planting. In other words, they put a percent of their profits towards this issue of addressing the challenges of climate. Lotus Capital, MICA, the Movement for Islamic Culture and Awareness, I'm aware, has been contributing towards tree planting nearly every year, as has the Islamic Education Trust, a number of organizations. So definitely tree planting is critical, but climate change is not just because people are cutting down trees. People are also not planting trees. There's a level of consumerism. There's a pollution problem that is coming from factories, and many things that affect climate. But can they do anything to help? Yes, they can. And there's much more they can do. But I think from the expectations point of view, we should not be expecting Islamic finance alone to solve the problem, that a problem as big as Islamic, as climate change and the environmental degradation and the ecological collapse of balanced ecological systems. We need political intervention. We need governments to play a role here. We need people's cultures to recognize that times are changing rapidly, and the use of firewood, or being, where you enjoy food that is cooked on firewood more than you enjoy food that is cooked on a gas stove, because sometimes that flavor of the smoke makes it much more delicious. However, it comes at a cost to the environment. There are legal dimensions to the issues of climate change. So it's beyond just Islamic finance, beyond just faith-based organizations, civil society organizations, environmental groups. It requires government and intergovernmental responsibilities and interventions. So definitely Islamic finance should play its role, but I think so should every educational institution, traditional leadership, political leadership. Everybody should do something about climate change because it affects everything. It's very tectonic. It's very major. It's nearly impossible to stop. And we all have a responsibility for our children's environment.
Indeed, Sheik Lemu, climate change is the biggest threat to health facing humanity. I must agree with you that all hands must be on deck. Not only Islamic financial institutions should support. I know we need their support, in terms of Islamic financial instrument like Green Sukuk, Sharia compliant bonds, Green Sukuk, can be used to finance sustainable projects like renewable energy, waste management, energy efficiency, and resilience to climate change. Speaking on the intervention of Islamic finance in addressing climate change, how can Islamic finance play a crucial role, like a keystone species in nature, in fostering ethical capitalism for a sustainable future and ensuring we don't leave a degraded environment for future generations?
I like the metaphor you brought of keystone species. This is a very interesting and important one. In ecology, so for example, wolves or lions play the role of keystone species, and there are many ecologies where different species play that role. But for the audience, lions, for example, in Arabia, were a keystone species because they controlled the population of antelopes and mountain goats. When these lions were all killed, there was nothing to control the population of the mountain goats, the ibexes, the antelopes. And so these animals, these herbivores, continue to eat plants and bushes and grass until they basically turned the place into desert that ended up becoming the downfall of all the other species. We find the same thing in the Greater Yellowstone Park. When the wolves were killed, there was nothing to eat the bison, the antelopes, the deer, all the other animals, the elks that lived in that area. And these herbivores then increased in their numbers and started to convert the place to a desert. Later, wolves were reintroduced, and 70 to 80 years later, the land was reclaimed back to forests, etc., when it was on the brink of turning into a desert. And so you actually find in societies, there are certain institutions that are critical to the survival of even the others. The economy has been a major area, and the role of entrepreneurs, which cannot be overemphasized. And I think Islamic finance can definitely play a role. If it claims to be concerned about ethics, it needs to be greener. It needs to be very interested in supporting businesses that are into recycling, into reuse, into environmental protection, greener energy. Lotus Bank, for example, and I know this because I'm on their board, has Lotus Capital built a center, an office called the Lotus House in Lagos, and the entire building is solar when it comes to its energy source. But it's not just making sunlight and saving itself a lot of money. It is actually exporting electricity and selling electricity to other companies around that become a source of income. In other words, it's green when it comes to its own energy source. And I think because it can afford that high capital installation, it's able to do so. But what it tells us is governments can actually make a lot of profit by having alternative sources of energy, especially in places where you do not have good electricity and people have to use generators. The cost of these diesel generators, apart from the fact that they are themselves environmentally polluting, they are far, far more expensive than solar energy. So I think, it's one of those things that I think many other Islamic organizations, Islamic financial institutions should see how they can also be solar when it comes to themselves, powered by solar energy, but to also look at how to support, and this is, I think, an important role that Islamic finance can play, how to support waqf and endowments that will support environmental causes, not just tree planting, but environmental clubs in schools, so that young people are more aware of the impending loom, to support organic agriculture that is more in tune and more balanced with nature, using natural fertilizers, natural ways of pest control, more biological ways of solving these problems, so that we don't just have halal, but we have halal and tayyiban. We have halal that is also pure, that the ecological impact or the negative impact of our industrial activities is minimized. I know governments try to play this role by ensuring that there's a focus on environment, governance, and community or social sector. But I think Islamic institutions can play a leading role by firstly making sure their sources of energy are renewable, such as solar, that they are top on the list in supporting greener causes, environmentally and ecologically efficient forms of energy, and that they see how to sponsor and support educational programs, media programs that make people more aware of this Khilafah role as vicegerents of Allah to protect the environment, as stewards of Allah. And we see how Islamic finance can play an increasing role in that regard.
Thank you very much, sir, Sheik Nurudeen. You mentioned one of the Islamic finance instruments for sustainability environment, which is WACF. I know WACF is a form of Islamic social financial instrument that has sustainability benefits. And sustainability is a key concept in Islam. Even research indicates that Islamic finance is meant to solve societal issues. So, looking at my next question, like soldiers in war, entrepreneurs play a critical role in addressing societal challenges. How can Sharia Zakat exception for reinvesting in businesses drive sustainable entrepreneurship, to tackle environmental issues effectively?
Definitely, the problem of environment is beyond what just the government can do. So government is definitely important. It's a keystone species in this effort. But beside government are entrepreneurs. And as you alluded, during war, and God forbid we have any wars, but whenever there's war, the soldiers are the frontliners when it comes to protecting lives and defending our societies. But during time of peace, it is entrepreneurs that are the job creators. They are the ones that make money move around. They are the ones that generate wealth, create dignified sources of labor, that give us jobs, that allow us to buy things, that allow us to make enough money to pay zakat, that help the less privileged. And the moment the entrepreneurs start leaving a society, it's like keystone species leaving. Society suffers. It just becomes an economic desert with greater poverty, greater insecurity, greater problems when entrepreneurs leave. And I think, when you look at even zakat, the fact that when an entrepreneur gets money and buys machinery for his factory, even when that machinery is valued in billions, none of it is zakatable because it is in the form of machinery and equipment. And the reason why these are exempted from zakat is because these are the people who are actually helping the poor. You don't double tax them. They're already helping the poor by creating jobs. They're already doing something that Sharia wants. They're already realizing the maqasid of Sharia in wealth distribution and job creation. So definitely entrepreneurs are important. And I think Islamic financial institutions can play and should play a very critical role in educating people in financial literacy, in making it possible for people to start small businesses. Unfortunately, I don't know a lot about what some of the other Islamic finance institutions are involved in when it comes to their corporate social responsibility. But I know Lotus Capital, for example, focuses on market women in Lagos, but it's trying to spread to other parts of the country. And part of what it does is puts a percent of its money to help market women expand their small businesses. So somebody who started with just a big bowl selling palm oil gradually has a small stall where she's selling palm oil and groundnut oil and other forms of oil. So how to help the small entrepreneurs become bigger, because when the small entrepreneur becomes bigger, they employ others. So, you know, when somebody just had a tray and they were selling pomo or, you know, just cow skin, and that's all they had. But after a while, they can afford to sell more than just cow skin. They also sell cow leg and cow head. After a while, they're actually selling the whole cow. After a while, they have a couple of butchers and people working for them. After a while, they buy directly from the abattoir and they've got a network of people. In other words, they've moved from just being a retailer to a wholesaler to a big business owner. So by helping such people climb up the financial ladder slowly, as they learn their mistakes, they learn to be more effective entrepreneurs, we're able to really increase the number of entrepreneurs. You know, it's like increasing the number of lions in the economy. They help boost the economy much more than trying to just give people food or give people charity. So most zakat goes towards consumables, unfortunately, but it's necessary. But Islamic financial instruments like Waqf, and I know a number of Awqaf organizations, these endowment funds are being established in Nigeria over the last couple of years, more and more in different parts of the country. And I think we need more literacy about how we could invest money in this. And they keep, so to speak, recycling, reinvesting the money, keeping the principal amount, factoring in inflation, so the capital continues to appreciate also, while the profit continues to support various charitable causes. Sukuk is a big one that can be used for major infrastructure that makes life easier for entrepreneurs. So when you improve the roads, you bring down the cost of travel. When you improve bridges, you bring back down the cost of travel. When you improve schools, and you know, so these are very useful Islamic instruments that can help not just corporate social responsibility, but create an environment where entrepreneurs can do their jobs, and we can get entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, economic entrepreneurs, healthcare entrepreneurs, environmental entrepreneurs, agricultural entrepreneurs. We need really more support for entrepreneurs in all areas because the challenge ahead of us is far greater than that of just what government alone can solve.
I must agree with you, Sheik Lemu. You know, you mentioned financial literacy. You know, financial literacy is key. Also, creating an enabling environment for entrepreneurs is also key. But we know zakat is also an obligatory that can be used to fund empowerment, education, key education for more knowledge. We need to sensitization and awareness to fund empowerment for these entrepreneurs.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When you look at zakat, you know, the Quran says zakat is for, and it mentions the categories of people So when it says zakat is for the poor, it doesn't mean you only give the poor 10,000 when 100,000 could have empowered the person. It's not, you help somebody, not just, so this issue of you give a person a fish and you feed them for a day, you teach them how to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. Yes, but you also have to help them think like fishermen. There's an education. Otherwise, you will give somebody 100,000 and they don't know how to turn it around and they make mistakes. There's no mentorship, there's no grooming, there's no coaching. So I think we need to be smarter at how we give zakat and not look at it as how many people did I give my zakat to, but what's the impact of that? So our charity work, our zakat has to be impact driven. It has to be needs driven. We don't want just keeping people dependent in poverty. We want to take them out of poverty. If we have out of school girls and out of school boys, al-majiris, etc., how do we give them vocational training with our zakat so that after 1 year or 2 years, they themselves are earning income and you don't see them by the roadside. And you don't see them just pushing wheelbarrows, and when politicians want them, they are available, or them joining gangs. We have to find ways of getting people out of that cycle of poverty, because the zakat is for those beneficiaries. So it's not just for the poor or the needy, but we find amilina alayha, in the administration of zakat. Those organizations and individuals who are involved in the zakat collections, the disbursement of zakat, have to be competent people who we pay good salaries to ensure the impact that we desire. Otherwise, globally, according to some studies globally, the zakat of Muslims is up to $300 billion. Some estimate that if you are to calculate the ones that we are not aware of, is probably up to $500 billion of zakat goes annually. And the same thing, you would find billions of zakat going out in Nigeria. But zakat is one thing. For most people, zakat is just about 2.5% of their total wealth once their income has reached nisab. But if you look at how much charity people give in sadaqah, I think it's easy to argue that the amount of money people give in sadaqah is far, far, far more than what they give in zakat. What people give out sometimes is sadaqah is over 10% of what they are giving out. Zakat is a very small amount. So I think it's really just to look at how to pool it, how to make sure Islamic organizations or organizations that are dealing with the problems that zakat is trying to solve are done in a professional manner, that we pay people well to make sure that it is impact driven, it is needs based, it is data driven, that we actually know that it is solving problem, not just we gave it, that there's accountability, transparency, there's reporting. So it's not just you give money and you are not sure what it's done, it's fi sabilillah. Fi sabilillah should never be poor quality. Good work should never be poor quality. We should have good accountability and make sure that it is being managed by entrepreneurs who can develop more entrepreneurs. So it's not just you give the imam and tell him to distribute it to the poor. That's nothing wrong, but there are ways you can actually have much more reward by helping fewer people, but helping them be on their feet so that they're able to take care of their families for years and decades and probably generations to come.
Thank you very much, Sheik Nurudeen. From what you've explained so far on zakat, zakat is an obligatory payment for all Muslims, and like you said, it can be used as an empowerment program to fund education, the environment, health, and other humanities financial problems. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us. So, as we wrap up the conversation, with past predictions of climate change, now a reality, how do we turn internal change into actionable environmental responsibility?
When we want to see change outside, we need to desire it within. Taqwa is what is called God consciousness. Ihsan is honoring that God consciousness. So you can go to a traffic light, you are aware of what needs to be done, but you don't honor the traffic light, you don't stop. You can know about an environmental problem, but you seem to have no problem eating in the same way, wasting food the same way, burning what do you call it, vegetation or firewood in a way that is irresponsible when it comes to our awareness. So very often we do not honor our knowledge of right and wrong with the correct action. In other words, taqwa is good, but its highest expression is in the form of ihsan, of honoring that knowledge and consciousness of Allah and Allah's guidance. I think it is for everybody in every sector. It's not everybody that's expected to solve every problem. The healthcare professionals are expected to focus and see what they can do about healthcare. The agriculturalists to see what they can do in their sector regarding environmental damage and the problems to do with treatment of animals. But we need policies regarding the cruelty to animals. A woman, according to a hadith, was punished in hell just because she was cruel to her cat. Many of us will buy meat when we seem to have no problem with the cruelty towards the cows when you see how they're being transported. We don't even decrease the amount of meat we eat when we see what our money is actually supporting. There's the need for us to really look again at how animals are kept, how animals are transported, how animals are treated, because if Allah is ready to punish in the hereafter, what would he do about punishment of a community in this world because they are mistreating animals? And, you know, there's a part of our humanity that gets lost when we become insensitive to the pain of animals. We realize in another hadith, a woman was forgiven all her sins because of her kindness to a thirsty dog. And so I think it is important when it comes to both animals, environmental issues, we may be denying ourselves Allah's blessings in this country simply because of how we treat animals, the poor, the less privileged, the environment, which is really a reflection of whether we care about the world our children would live in. Do we really care about the future environment of our children? If we do, we would plant more trees. If we do, we would pollute less. If we do, we would be more sensible in our consuming and our pollution. We would support more careers and scholarships in the area of environment. We will take environmental degradation more seriously, because if you do an atom's weight of good, you know you will see it on the day of judgment. Just as if you do an atom's weight of bad to the future of this planet, you will see it on the day of judgment. So just as sadaqah can be jariyah, can be long-lasting, but sin can be long-lasting too, because it continues to hurt generations to come. So I think there's a lot to be done in every sector, definitely from the side of the law enforcement, definitely from the side of entrepreneurs, definitely from the side of politicians and those environment, those from the side of media, Islamic organizations who should know better. No mosque should not have trees around it. Every mosque should be green. You know, one of the names of paradise in the Quran is Jannah. The word Jannah means a place with enough foliage and leaves that you can actually hide in. You know, it's a green place. That's why it's sometimes described as the garden of paradise. At least if we cannot have trees in front of our houses, around our houses, let us have trees around every mosque. Every Islamic school should have trees. Let our children be used to seeing trees. And when they see no trees, let it inspire a sense of responsibility to make this world more like Jannah, with more trees than we currently have. So I think there is an internal side, a spirituality that we need to work on. And I pray as we move into Ramadan, we put some of our sadaqah aside for tree planting and environmental projects, which is an investment in the sadaqatun jariyah for the future, as we put money for the poor and hungry. Let's remember, even the plants get hungry, even the plants get thirsty, as animals get thirsty. And the Prophet ﷺ said, there is a reward that Allah gives to any good you do to any living creature, and plants are definitely living things. And our dependency on them is really underestimated. We have to, I think, recognize that some of this climate change is inevitable, and we have to start preparing for it and ask ourselves, those environments that already have this kind of climate, whether it's in northern Sudan or Libya or Chad or these places, what particular crops are they growing that helps them in their own challenge? What can we start with so that we're not just sitting ducks, just waiting for climate change without looking at it as also coming with other opportunities that can give us a competitive advantage over other societies that have been living with this problem. There's a lot to learn from other countries and communities that have faced climate change. Wallahu alam. And we keep praying as we do the best we can.
Thank you so much, sir, for your for sharing more insights on how individuals or Islamic organizations can significantly contribute to the global search for climate finance solutions, through zakat, sadaqah, waqf, and also you mentioned green sukuk, and also the planting of trees, as you've explained. How these are regarded as an act of continuous charity and can undoubtedly contribute significantly to resolving humanitarian crises caused by climate change. And also, I must tell you that the Islamic multilateral institutions, ISDB, Islamic Development Bank, recognizes climate change action as a key priority area, and they invest in high impact projects in many sectors like energy, climate smart agriculture, forestry, zero carbon buildings, sustainable transport, sustainable cities, even amongst others. Thank you so much, Sheik Lemu, for talking to us on the TrustArthur program on climate change. Thank you so much, sir. It was nice having you.
You're most welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. Jazakumullahu khairan. Ramadan Kareem in advance.
See, I wish you the same, sir. Have a nice day, sir.
You too.
Right. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.